Good afternoon. I believe we are now live. Good afternoon. Welcome from Moneyline MMA here to cover UFC Seattle, headlined by Henry Cejudo versus Yadong Song. As the main event, Brendan Allen versus Anthony Hernandez is the co-main event, and these fights will be, as the name suggests, occurring in Seattle, Washington, with the prelims starting at 5 p.m. Central Time. So we're still getting our normal fight times for this card, even though it is still on the West Coast, as we've seen here for the last couple of fights, with last being in Vegas. So yeah, that said, before we get too deep into things, as always here, I got a couple of things to cover before we get into our fights. First, you might notice that I'm by myself today and this afternoon. Jose had an emergency come up, so he is not able to make the show. I'll give him credit, though. I think we've been doing this show for at least a year and a half, 2 years now, and this, I believe, is his first absence from the show. So still a great run there for Jose, and we wish him the best with his situation. But moving forward, the show does not stop. We still have fights coming up on Saturday, the Saturday after that, and the Saturday after that. We have nonstop fights coming to us from the UFC. We're in the full swing for 2025. So let's quick recap what we had from last week. It was a little bit disappointing, at least from my perspective, man. Gregory Rodriguez just couldn't get the job done. Kind of disappointed with how that played out. You have to give credit to Jared Cannonier, the veteran presence, was able to get the job done. But I really had higher hopes for Gregory Rodriguez there. It'll go down as a KO of Gregory Rodriguez, but it was really more of a technical finish there. And Cannonier just kind of showing his veteran ability. I still don't see him really making another run for the belt. But you got to give him credit for getting that win there. And it maybe just kind of shows that there is still a little bit of a hierarchy there at the middleweight division, with Jared Cannonier being at that low end of the top five area, and RoboCop still needing to make some improvements if he believes he's one of the few. Other than that, Yusuf Salah gets the job done. That's a pick that Jose and I had agreed on. So that technically, I believe, would have combined to being the lock of the week last week, just based on him or Bonfim, just based on the point distributions. Speaking of Bonfim, how disappointing was that? He gets question mark kicked beautifully. Like, I have to give Sadikov credit. That was a beautiful question mark kick, landed square in Bonfim's face. But Bonfim, to me, didn't seem like he couldn't fight anymore. I don't know. They called it off. The doctor, they were speculating on the broadcast that at one point Bonfim said he couldn't see, but then when the referee came up to him, he could see. I don't quite know what the dialogue was, but apparently the referee got the indication that he did not believe Bonfim was fit to continue fighting. And in between rounds there, they called off the fight, with Sadikov landing that question mark kick and just dazing him. So it's going down as a KO TKO doctor stoppage, but it was by that kick that really set things off. So I guess props to Sadikov, but I can't help but feel like that was an example when we say, like, a guy's going to win this fight 8 out of 10 times. I just can't help but feel like that was the 2 out of 10 for Mr. Sadikov. I'm not ragging on him. I think he's got some potential as a fighter. He's only 30 years old, so he's got some time. And I don't believe he's lost yet in the UFC. So in his mind, he's a prospect, future champ or whatever, but I'm not convinced yet. I can't help but feel like that was just really good timing and somewhat luck on his part. Of course, amazing technique on the kick, but Bonfim is a really good fighter too. I don't think that's the last we're going to see of him. Without going on with that for too long, though, the other main contradiction was Andre Petroski versus Adolfo Vieira. So earlier, Jose did get the win. He had picked Jared Cannonier as his 3-weight, and RoboCop was my 5-weight. But in this case, I have picked Petroski, and Jose picked Vieira, with our 3 and 1 weight respectively. Petroski getting the unanimous decision win. Nothing much to say there. Got the job done, and that's that. I think the last fight that we mainly want to discuss is Dylan Budka. We pretty much discussed everyone else. I guess Edmund Shabazian as well. That was the last of the contradictions, I should say, between Jose and I. And Jose will be 2-1 on the contradictions from this past week, as Edmund Shabazian put out Budka in the first round. And, to be quite honest, as someone who went as far as to put Budka as my one weight, I will say it was my one weight. I did not have that much confidence. But, boy, for him to get that loss by first round KO, boy, is that tough to see. And, boy, I'm going to have to reevaluate my board going forward for guys like him, because that just wasn't at all close. To get finished like that in the first round is rough. But either way, we're going to continue to adjust forward. Jose and I are both going to be getting on a 5-weight streak. And with that started, it's hard for me to say Jose's perspective of it, because he did not have the chance to provide me any weights, just given his situation. So we're running here without Jose's weights, and we're only going to have my weights for this afternoon. If Jose does have the time, he might go live and give you guys a look at what his picks are before Saturday, and that might give him the ability to keep his picks logged. But until then, we're going to have to roll with just my picks for this Saturday. As always, for anyone new to Moneyline MMA, we make our picks in a 5-weight system, in which we pick 5 fights of the currently scheduled 12 for UFC Seattle. And boy, oh boy, have there been a ton of cancellations on this card. It's honestly crazy that it's down to 11. So they only have 11 fights, and it's honestly amazing they have 11. Because I'm seeing about 7 cancellations right now alone from this card, and wow, that is just disappointing. There's last minute replacements galore on this card. So with that said, I'm going to move forward. We start with our 5 weights. So as I mentioned earlier, 5 of those 11 fights I make a pick on, and then I weigh those picks in order of confidence, with 5 being the highest confidence and 1 being the least confident. And we don't dilly-dally around here. We start with our most confident picks. And for me, my most confident pick of Saturday afternoon, as much as I want it to be someone we're going to talk about soon, I'm going to put it on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. We're going to go to the co-main event right away. This is a really crazy fight, in my opinion, for a fight night. Seattle's getting a real, this is very nice to see Brendan Allen and Fluffy Hernandez. I think Fluffy is on one of the most underappreciated win streaks in the UFC right now. He's currently on a 6-fight win streak, and we could go 7 of 8 in his last 8. So 7 wins of his last 8 UFC fights, and his only loss is Kevin Holland back in 2020, nonetheless. So Fluffy Hernandez has just been kind of walking through everybody. It's been interesting because he actually submitted Rodolfo Vieira, after not going for any takedowns. But he, other than that, he's a very heavy wrestler in almost all of his fights. He's going to land a couple of takedowns. He's going to beat you up. And you know what I got to say really earned my respect is his fight against Michel Pereira. Because I was on Michel. I'm a big fan of Demolador. He's the kind of guy who came from, I believe he was at welterweight. And it was like, no, you got to fight at middleweight, dude. You are not going to be able to make weight consistently. He is just a dog. And Anthony Fluffy Hernandez outdogged him for 5 rounds and ended up getting the KO finish. That wasn't even really close. And you got to give credit to Anthony Hernandez's conditioning and wrestling ability. Now, I understand that Brendan Allen has a black belt or whatever. He's got his jiu-jitsu right. He's got 14 submission wins and 1 submission loss. So that's nothing to scoff at. But what I'm not looking here is the submission threat. I'm not really that concerned about Anthony Hernandez getting submitted. It's just not something, I think Brendan Allen will be wise to practice and train his jiu-jitsu to be able to use that. But I think Anthony Hernandez is too wise to what he seems to me is. You don't get on a 6-fight win streak, right, without understanding your opponents and knowing their strengths and what they're going to come at you with. He knows that Brendan Allen is going to have that in his back pocket if Brendan Allen's on his back. So, in my opinion, Hernandez is going to be able to keep himself out of those submission spots and use wrestling still to utilize points and win rounds. What's really unique is that this is a 3-round fight, and Hernandez is coming off. Brendan Allen, first of all, is coming off a 3-round loss via decision, but But Hernandez was the main event of his last fight, and even though he got the KO win, it went to round 5, and he was still dogging it out. I mean, boy, does he's like Marab almost. Like, he just keeps going. So pretty much I say all that to say, I think the 3 rounds even almost benefits Brendan Allen, because Brendan Allen might be gassed rounds 4 and 5, and Hernandez is ready to keep going. But at the same aspect, maybe Hernandez knows there's only 15 minutes to go. I need to put my foot on the gas even harder from the start. I don't quite know, but in any case, keep in mind that this is only 3 rounds, and Fluffy Hernandez has really been able to handle 5 rounds easily. I really do see Fluffy Hernandez as a solid prospect in this division amongst not as many guys who can wrestle. Of course, Khamzat is looming, but Strickland and Duplessis and Whitaker, right? But like, those guys can but don't really choose to wrestle very much. And with that said, I think Fluffy and Khamzat might be some of the newcomer stars of this division, and he's going to prove it on this Saturday night. What I'll note before moving on is that we're talking about a minus 295 favorite is Fluffy Hernandez. So Brendan Allen, I have to admit, has some decent value as the level of dog he is. He also had a nuts, like 6 or 7 fight win streak before losing to Imavov. And we just watched Imavov beat Izzy, right? And I know some people are probably like, yeah, well, Izzy's washed, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Dana said it, and I believe we all can agree that if you actually watch the fight at least, that Izzy did win the first round. And Imavov just got a great shot on him in the second round. So Nasruddin Imavov's a pretty good fighter. That's not a bad loss to take. And I do not knock Brendan Allen very much, if at all, for taking that loss to Imavov. So this is tough. This is not something I'm saying that here, because it's my 5-weight, I'm putting my own money on it. That is not necessarily the case. I have little interest in putting my money here at that value. I would need a lot more thin of a margin, and I don't honestly think they're giving enough respect to Brendan Allen, but that still doesn't mean I think he's going to win the fight. But that said, moving on, just as a quick reminder, if you did not get here at the beginning, Jose was not able to make it today, and we only have my weights to cover. So my 5-weight that I just covered is Anthony Hernandez, and I'm going to be moving on to my 4-weight. And honestly, this 4-weight could be interchangeable with my 5-weight. I said it earlier that we're going to be talking about this guy soon. I would make him my 5-weight, but let's just be real. It's kind of too easy. It's kind of too, like, I'm not out here to just make the easiest possible pick and move on. We're talking about Gene Silva versus Melsik Baghdasaryan. And I'm sorry if I butchered that name, but who cares? Because he's a plus 450 dog. He's going to get knocked out. Gene Silva, minus 720. I hate to ride on Melsik too much. He's not trash. He just isn't active. Like, he almost never fights. He's got some UFC experience, but it's like, okay, you fought in 2023. You had some canceled fights in 2024. And it looks like in some cases it was his opponent, but then in some cases it was him. So now you're starting to wonder, like, is he injured? Did he have to heal? Is he fully healthy? Too many question marks, in my opinion, around Melsik right now, and that's a big reason why he's such a big underdog. Of course, I don't need to sit here and say much about Gene Silva. He's been dominating everybody. He hasn't lost yet in the UFC, although he's only had 2 fights in the UFC after his Contender Series win to get his contract. But with that said, one of them was beating Charles Jourdain, which, okay, Charles Jourdain isn't that great, but that's still a pretty good win to finish, at least, getting the KO. And then he beats Drew Dober as well, and if I'm not mistaken, that was last-minute replacement. He at least didn't get the full camp. Let me see. Yeah, that was June to July, so that wasn't even a full month apart, in which he beat Charles Jourdain and then beat Drew Dober. I mean, how impressive is that? Getting UFC Fight of the Night. Gene Silva, I believe, is a dog. And there's nothing, like, you know what you're going to get out of Gene Silva. I don't think he's a guy that you have to worry too much about, like, oh, is he going to have a sick stomach and not feel good that day? He's going to be the dog that he is every time. I've got full confidence in that. And, as far as my money goes, I would still feel more confident because you're not going to get the best odds. Like, I'm saying Gene Silva by KO, for sure. Single bet on that. But it's still probably going to be around the same as Fluffy Hernandez, straight up to it, like minus 295. If you're lucky, Gene Silva by KO might even be more than that. It might even price it in because he doesn't really get submissions. Decisions possible too, but they might price that in. It might only be like minus 500. And that's tough. That's really steep. I would not advise that for single bets. Maybe unless you're just making, but I'm not advising parlays either. Don't take that as like go and make parlays because I saw some statistic about parlays being something around 90+% of all total bets placed, at least on online casinos. And I was talking to my buddy, I was like, how do you think they make so much money? You know what I'm saying? Like, if that's the case, if 90+% of parlays are being placed and they're that rich, that means parlays aren't the way to go, right? And that means you're not doing something in unique, and you're doing what everybody else does, and everybody else loses money. So we got to find unique ways to beat the books here. If you do bet on FanDuel and DraftKings, using the +3.5, -3.5 can be really helpful. Of course, trying to single out, like I said, winning methods, but you have to be pretty sure in those things, and you still have to find value, right? When I say bet, when I say bet a guy like Gene Silva by KO, like I think it's going to be a winning bet, yes, but if it's -1,000, that's not good value. Why would you bet that? You can bet his money line for less. So you know what I'm saying. Just find value. Don't be stupid, and make sure you're not getting scammed by the casino. Because yes, it's one thing if you think it's going to win, but if you're not getting good value, who cares? You're not going to go to the store and buy bad apples because you're getting a good value. It's just not. It's just not how it works. So moving on. Really, I guess I'm saying moving on because I have nothing more to say here about Gene Silva. He's going to win by KO, and that's that. So 3-weight is going to be Yadong Song. That means we're going to be going into the main event of Saturday afternoon. Henry Cejudo, I'm a fan of his, right? I know he's cringe. I know he's got these weird, corny things he says in medias, and it's like, okay, this guy's kind of weird. I get it, but I think he embraces that. That's just Henry Cejudo being his little character. And it worked for him for a little while. Obviously, 2-division champ, Olympic gold medalist, blah, blah, blah. Times have changed. This is certainly not the same Henry Cejudo that we would have seen a few years ago. He took a long time off, almost 3 exact years to be specific, and still hasn't been able to really capture that magic since losing to Aljo and then Merab. Now, of course, those are 2 of the best. We can confidently say that too now after watching Merab beat Sean and watching Merab just pretty much dominate everybody he fights. It's just like props to Merab. No doubt about it. Topuria as well. So either way. That said, I'm sitting here like, man, maybe it is the right time to take Cejudo because he's got all the veteran savvy. He's doing all the things in his camp right. Like all the steps that are going to be taken to win a fight are going to be followed. He's a very sequence man. He's going to do all the steps in order, and he's going to do them the right way. So you can have confidence in that. But man, this is just the top of the top, and he's fighting Song Yadong. Like, that is just so difficult. Song Yadong is so fast. That's the thing I think about immediately when I think of Song Yadong. Speed, boxing, and he has some power too. 9 KOs in his of his 21 professional wins, 9 KOs. So that matches the amount of decision wins he's gotten. So yes, he might not knock everybody out that he fights like Gene Silva, right? But he's got some KOs. He's knocked out Ricky Simone in 2023. He knocked out Marlon Moraes in 2022, and he hasn't been finished other than unless you count the Dr. Stoppage cut against Corey Sandhagen a few years ago. But other than that, it was a decision against Petr Yan. And look, I honestly think Petr Yan beats Henry Cejudo as well. Petr Yan is a stud. He also sometimes gets underappreciated. He's a former champ for a reason. And just because he lost to Aljo, and people hate him because he technically stopped fighting against Aljo in that illegal knee situation, and people got mad because they thought he could keep fighting. But keep your personal bias aside. He's a great fighter. And we got to give some respect to Petr Yan. But that's besides the point because obviously Petr Yan's not fighting on Saturday night. I'm just trying to defend the fact that Yadong Song may not have as much of an impressive resume as Henry Cejudo here. I get it if you're a resume guy, but Yadong Song is definitely current day the better fighter here. He's faster, he's younger, he's more agile. I believe he's got the same, if not better, technique striking. Henry Cejudo, in my opinion, would need to go to his wrestling game. And although that might find some success, Yadong Song has kind of been there, done that with some wrestlers. Petr Yan did land 2 takedowns against him, but it only equated to about 1:40 of control time. So, I guess 1:40 of 15 minutes is somewhat significant. But in the end, Petr Yan didn't just wrestle Yadong Song into a victory. And if that was the case, I'd be a little more worried. But I believe Yadong Song is just going to have a great game plan. He's going to know where his advantages are, which is on the feet, and utilize that to get at least a decision win. KO win is on the table as well, but I would say I would lean decision. KO or points could also be on the table. So that would be my 3-weight pick on the favorite, Yadong Song. And just before I move on, when I say favorite, I mean minus 295. She's actually got the same current line as Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. That's funny that the co-main and the main event have the exact same money lines right now. Song as the favorite and Fluffy Hernandez as the favorite. So yep, picking some favorites here. Maybe take, if you want to, if you're just insistent and you have to do a parlay, you just have to, fine. Then maybe do a 2-leg parlay between Song Yadong. I almost keep saying that wrong. Song Yadong and Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Do that, you'll get like minus 150, 160 or something and move on. That'll be a decent bet. But I can't condone any more parlays than that. With that said, we're going to move on to my 2-weight. We're going to be sticking to the main card here. This is the feature fight of Saturday afternoon. This is Gene Matsumoto versus Rob Font. Rob Font, crowd favorite. Guy from the East Coast. Got to watch him live get wrestled into nothingness by Corey Sandhagen. UFC Nashville. Kind of boring, but what can you say? It was a last-minute replacement. But that's besides the point. Rob Font is coming off a win against Kyler Phillips last year. He's coming off a win last year, and he's fighting Matsumoto, a guy who's got 2 wins in the UFC so far, and 3 if you count his Contender Series win to get his contract. He's been able to deal a lot of damage to his opponents, and it's interesting because, yes, he's gotten a submission win. So even though he's dealing a lot of damage, he's getting a submission win or a decision win, at least so far in his UFC career. But as far as his layout for his professional career in general, he's got 16 professional fights. 7 of those, 16 professional fights, all of wins, no losses yet. 7 wins by decision, 6 by submission. So definitely not the most powerful striker, at least so far, of what we've seen so far. Usually, if you are a powerful striker too, you have an easier time getting those KOs in younger, not younger, but lower level, more amateur leagues, I should say. So if you're not starting your career off with some knockouts, you're probably not the heaviest thrower. And to be honest, that's part of what concerns me, because I think Font is just way too good. He's still shown that he's got it against Kyler Phillips just a few months ago. He's still the same Rob Font we know and love. And I'm just going to be honest, I don't think Matsumoto is ready for that. I think the step up in competition from Brad Katona to Rob Font is massive. I think that's insane. To sit here and be like, I don't know, Gene Matsumoto, that's just crazy to me. That is a massive jump up in competition. So I'm going to take my boy Rob Font. Honestly, I don't know too much about the odds. I can't find the odds. I'm looking here on FanDuel. I don't know. I know this is partially because it's last minute, right? Rob Font was supposed to, let me check, because I'm forgetting. He was supposed to fight Dominic Cruz. That's right. Dominic Cruz was supposed to fight Rob Font in this card, and it was going to be his retirement fight. But he had to drop out and just retire on the spot because he got injured again, and he didn't want to go through the healing process to get ready to fight again, which is it's hard not to blame a guy for that. So, or hard to blame a guy, I should say. So I'm not blaming him. We love Dominic Cruz, but that means Matsumoto is also coming in off last-second replacement. That's the thing I like even more. He's not getting his full camp. Rob Font's always in shape. I don't know, man. This seems like a lineup to me. Like I said, I don't even know the odds to this fight, but something tells me people are gonna like Matsumoto here because he's undefeated. Because he's looking all flashy. He's got a submission win and some decision wins. I think he's taking too much damage. It only counts for his 3 fights between Contender Series and his fight nights, but he's taken over 5 strikes per minute absorbed right now. That's quite significant. And all the fights Rob Font's had against all the dogs he's fought against, Rob Font is absorbing 3.58. And to me, that's pretty significant. Rob Font's very clearly better in the box. He's avoiding damage when needed, and I'm not sure we're going to see Matsumoto do that. So regardless of the odds here, something tells me this is going to be closer to an underdog pick. But Rob Font, I would actually be more inclined to bet on Rob Font when those lines do come out than I would be any of the weights I've really given up to this point, just based on straight value, right? If you're asking me, do I want to bet Gene Silva at minus 720 or Rob Font at minus 150, I'm betting Rob Font all day long. So, yep. I can't quite say what the odds are going to be. It seems like the fight was put together a little bit late, a little bit recently here, but we're going with Rob Font here at Moneyline MMA, and that remains one fight of my 5 picks for Saturday afternoon, and we're going way off the main card for this one. I was honestly kind of sad and disappointed to see how early in the card, and not I guess sad is the wrong word. Like, who cares the placement of a card really, or of a fight I should say? If it's on the card, it's on the card, right? And who really cares if it's prelim or not? But it does feel like somewhat of like a dang, like, is the UFC maybe trying to send a message, specifically to Ricky Simon? This is Ricky Simon versus Javid Basharat. Javid Basharat was supposed to be, and I guess you can't say he's fallen away from, but was really supposed to be one of the bigger, like he was definitely one of the more bigger talked about prospects. So he was supposed to be a stud. He was supposed to be like one of the next big champ, like Khamzat level, like and that's what I'm saying. Like, straight up, he's going to dominate everyone and become the champ. And this is bantamweight. This is 135, by the way. And he took his loss to Ayman Sahabi. He had a no contest against Victor Henry. So his last couple of years kind of fell off hard. And you can really see that now in his stats, but you are not going to be able to see that on the board. If you go buy on the board, I mean in the odds, right? Javid Basharat's a minus 310 favorite. I say all that to say that he's fighting Ricky Simon, a UFC veteran, at plus 230 is Ricky Simon, minus 310 Javid Basharat. That is crazy. But kind of what I said earlier is it almost seems like the UFC is trying to send Ricky Simon a message. He's on 4 straight losses. He lost to Yadong Song, who's now, of course, on the main event. Mario Batista, who's a really solid boxer. And then Vinicius Oliveira. The one, I said 4, but it's actually 3, because one of those is a grappling match, not a UFC match, so that doesn't really count. But Vinicius Oliveira is also looking pretty solid himself. He's coming off of a couple of wins. He's been able to put a lot of wins together, and also beat Said Nurmagomedov. So that doesn't make Ricky Simon look bad at all. So I guess essentially what I'm saying is, I understand Ricky Simon is on a tough losing streak of 4 straight fights, but I believe that all 4 of those fighters are pretty solid, or 3. I keep saying 4, but it's 3. I believe that all 3 of those fighters are solid. And Javid Basharat himself is coming off a loss against Ayman Zahabi, who I'm not really that impressed by. So that was the fight also that broke Javid Basharat's undefeated nature. So if you're telling me you're carrying an undefeated nature into that fight and you're not going crazy to hold that record, I automatically question. And he lost by decision. It's not like he got knocked out. He should have been going crazy. I don't know. Javid Basharat, to me, just isn't it. I'm looking to take Ricky Simon here. I think he's going to have the veteran savvy. Ricky Simon is arguably in his MMA prime right now. And I think he's going to bring it, knowing his contract is potentially on the line after the UFC puts him this early on the card. So that will be my one weight. And mind you, Ricky Simon is plus 230. I believe I already mentioned that, because Javid is minus 310 favorite after coming off a loss as bad as he did. I just think that that's extremely good value. So those are going to be my 5 picks as a quick recap. Hernandez 5 weight, Gene Silva 4 weight, Yadong Song 3 weight, Gene Matsumoto against Rob Font, and Rob Font is my 2 weight, and then my 1 weight is Ricky Simon. Don't have odds on all those, but I believe that's 2 dogs, 3 favorites. Let us know down below who you agree with, who you disagree with, if you're going to be making any bets, and send your best wishes to Jose as well. We'll, as always, be back next week, as always, here at Moneyline MMA. We're going to be here every Monday before fights the UFC provides on Saturday, which is going to be the consistent case for the next month or so. Manel Kape versus Asu Amobayev will be our next card. Excuse me. That'll be the first day of March in which that fight takes place. And that's going to be back in the UFC Apex. And then after that card, we're going to get our next pay-per-view event in which we're going to see Alex Pereira defend his belt again against Magomed Ankalaev and a couple of other fights on that card. But that, honestly, that one's a little... we'll see what they do with that one, because they've had some early cancellations on that one and somewhat late as well, because this fight is where Gene Matsumoto was supposed to fight Chris Gutierrez, but now he's fighting this Saturday. And then Bruno Silva was supposed to fight Josh Van, but withdrew. And we also had a light heavyweight bout withdrawal. So a couple of fights already getting taken off this card with weeks to go. Hopefully that gives them time to find some replacements. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and talk to you next week.